Hello everybody, it's me, again. Who could have believed it? It's almost like it's becoming a habit. Maybe I might do another one in the near future as well. Probably not day after day, but count yourself lucky, I've got another bit of spare time, so I'm going to do another video. And this particular sample donation was very kindly sent to me by a gentleman called Pete James. There's no picture there because I haven't got a picture of him. But Pete, thank you very much for these. He's based in America and sent me a load of samples of American whiskies, of which this is one. Quite how this managed to get in one piece without that coming off, I've no idea. But Pete, thank you very much for that. He's actually got a couple of samples, and the next one that I'm going to do, whenever that is, will actually follow on from this because it's quite closely linked. So this particular sample that he sent me is from a distillery called Bull Run Distilling Company. Distilling? That's not even a word, Ben. Distilling Company, which is based in Portland, Oregon. It was this particular whiskey was launched in 2016, but Bull Run Distilling was launched in 2010 by a guy called Lee Medoff. I'm going to go with Medoff rather than Medoff. It's M-E-D-O-F-F, so I'm going to say it's Lee Medoff. When I first saw that picture, I actually thought he looked a little bit like the younger brother of Stanley Tucci, but that might just be me, because the more I look at it, the more I think it's absolutely nonsense. Lee started his career actually as a brewer. Way back in the 90s, way back in the 1990s. That is way back. It's a long time. We're all getting old. And he then moved into winemaking and spent a bit of time over in France. But where he was working, the winery, they also did distilling in the evening. And he found that he was more interested in distilling than he was in winemaking. So he ended up working for a company called McMenamins, which means nothing to me at all. It's not something I've come across before, essentially in distilling work. And then in 2004, co-founded a company called House Spirits, who have produced Aviation Gin, and they're also responsible for the Westwood whiskey, which is the other sample that Pete sent me, which I'm going to do following on from this because it's quite a similar style of whiskey. So he was working with House Spirits, but ended up leaving that, basically selling his half of the business to his business partner at the time, and then co-founded Bull Run Distilling with another gentleman whose name I can't remember. In 2010, and they started off basically sourcing whiskies while they were setting themselves up to distill themselves. So they have a range already in their portfolio. It was, I think they were called traders or something like that. Traders or merchants from Bull Run Distilling is essentially sourced whiskies from elsewhere. So there is a bourbon, there's a barrel strength bourbon, and a couple of cask finishes as well. But they are now doing their own juice, and this is what he wanted to get into, because Lee was quite a fan of Scotch. Was he actually wanted to do single malt using malted barley rather than a bourbon or an American whiskey or anything like that. So this particular one is actually 100% Oregon barley. The wash is done by a brewer nearby called Burnside Brewing. So they're essentially doing the pre-work for the distillation to then produce this. Now, it's matured in new charred oak casks, American oak, but not had anything in beforehand. And the reason he's chosen to do that is essentially he loves Scotch, but he didn't want to make an American Scotch, as it were. He didn't want to use, say, sherry casks or bourbon casks. He wanted to do 100% malted barley, but then do it in brand new virgin oak to have a sort of a sweeter element to it. Rather than what he was wanting to do was essentially make an equivalent of a single malt whiskey that was also working cocktails, and you need that slightly sweeter style to work in mixing and to kind of balance out flavors and things like that. And in his mind, maturing it in a traditional fashion, you know, using sherry cask, using bourbon cask, wasn't going to give him that sort of sweetness that he was looking for. Now, reading about this and knowing about this, I've got two glasses because I'm going to compare this with. And as you know, if you've been watching my other videos, I work for Gordon MacPhail, who own the Benromach range, which is there once I've got my hands in place. Now, the Benromach Organic is quite similar in terms of production process to this Bull Run, simply because the Organic uses unpeated malted barley, but it's matured in virgin oak casks from America. Because in order to be organic, they couldn't guarantee that the sherry or the bourbon or whatever was in the cask beforehand would be organic, so they went, right, we'll just use virgin casks. So I'm wondering whether the flavour profile of the organic is going to be quite similar to this Bull Run. So I'll be very interested to see what it's like, because I like the organic because it's got that bourbony element to it, being new virgin charred oak casks. So we'll see how this goes. If I can get the thing open. I'm going to have to use my teeth again. I do apologise about this because I know some of you don't like this. Oh, that's why, because he's taped it all the way around. Bloody hell, Pete. You could have told me. Wow, that's some proper gaffer tape on there. Right, I haven't got my jigger because this looks like it's actually more than a... Oh, it's gone. Do you know what? I'm going to wing it. You know, we'll break the rules for a little bit because that is more than 25 cl. 25 cl, 25 mil. So we'll go with about that. Yeah, that looks about right. So, where's my bit of cloth gone? And we'll show you the colour. If you can pick that up. Actually quite a nice amber, definite amber colour on that. Quite pleasant indeed. Oh, I didn't show you the bottle. This is what the bottle looks like. Now they do it in small batches. This particular one, which Pete's got down written here, is it's a 4-year-old. It's 44.54%, which is extremely explicit. Explicit? Yes. And it's batch 1. So what that means, I don't know. I don't know if this is like the very, very first bottling that they've ever done, or they have like a batch 1, which will be a certain number of runs that they do. Not explicit, specific. Very specific ABV, not an explicit ABV. That would be something like 80085 boobs. So, nice amber colour. I do like that colour. Nose, very bourbony. Very bourbony. Although, there's a weird underlying... Oh, it's sort of a... It's not quite sawdust. It's not quite vegetal. So there is this lovely fruity, bourbony, raisiny-ness that I love about bourbon. But it's almost like a sourdough rye bread type of element, which is unusual because it's 100% barley. But there is a definite breadiness to it, but it's a rye brown bread. So you've got this sweetness, but then you've also got it's a bit like kind of bread pudding, but the slightly kind of like when you've caramelised the top of the bread and it's slightly charred. But it's bread pudding made with brown bread rather than white bread. It's weird. It's like instantly, you put your nose in, you take a sniff, and instantly you're thinking, well, it's bourbon. There is that sort of raisiny, caramelly sweetness. But then all of a sudden there's this undercurrent of something else, which is it's not quite vegetal, it's not quite sour, it's pleasant. It's, you know, vegetal and sour sound as though they could be a bit dodgy, a bit kind of like, oh, I'm not too sure about these flavours. This is pleasant, this is warming, but it's unusual, it's different, it's really kind of caught me off guard. Yes, it's a definite rye bread feel to it. Now, I'm in my garage. It's... Ooh, wasn't expecting that. It's quite a cold day today. So, it feels like it's slightly chilled. And I think a proper room temperature, like a warm room temperature, this I'd probably be picking, there'd be a bit more impact from this. But so it's 4-year-old, but it's not sharp. 44.54%, so not a massive ABV. And I wonder actually if that's maybe a little bit too low, because there's not a huge amount to it. There's not much of an alcohol burn. There is a bourbony sweetness, and that rye sourdough element sort of is there, but it's quite distant. It's not as prominent as it was on the nose. It's definitely there on the nose. There's something else as well. It's a bit like sawdust. It really is, but it's a pleasant, warming, woody smell. Very subtle. It's not like oak. It's quite delicate and soft. That's why I'm kind of going more for sawdust. It's a very subtle wood element, but it's sort of a warm wood. It's really, really difficult to describe, clearly, as I'm struggling to even get it across to you. I do like that nose. That's really nice. Bit more of a bite from the alcohol then. Lovely mouthfeel. It's quite rich. That rye sourdough note is definitely there. Nice fruitiness. yeah, if I was trying this blind, I probably would say it's probably bourbon, that sort of thing. And I would probably say it's bourbon, and it's, in terms of its corn, you know, the makeup of the mash, there's probably some rye element in there as well, maybe something like 30% rye. I certainly wouldn't pick that as 100% barley. There is a nice sweetness to it. There's enough of this bite that it probably will work quite well in cocktails. I don't think it's got quite enough bite for something like an old-fashioned where you really need a bit more of a kick to it, but I can see why. I think some people might think it's a bit lacking. There is a sort of in the middle ground. It feels like there needs to be something. There needs to be a bit more weight, and I don't know if that's just the alcohol percentage just needs to be slightly higher, maybe sort of 46, 48. There's a lovely rich mouthfeel to it. It dies a little bit quickly as well. It gets a little bit drying. There's a very, very minor hint of aniseed, really mild, almost like a licorice aniseed, and it dies off a little bit too quick. But it's not a sipping whiskey, it's a drinking whiskey, but it's pleasant. It's quite nice. Now, I don't actually know if this is available in the UK. What I didn't do was actually look. In fact, you know, excuse me, I'm going to have a quick look just to see if it is there. To see whether it is available anywhere in the UK, but I'd be very surprised if it is, and to be honest, if it was probably going to be quite expensive. So let's just do a quick check. This is very good radio, isn't it? It's not called Bull Ton Single Malt, you idiot. Right, let's just see. I mean, apparently it's available around Oregon. I don't know how further afield it is. Now, I've just put it into Google. Nothing's coming up from the UK. Ace Spirits, wherever that is, are selling it for... Now, see, that's a Temperance Trader. That was it. Temperance Trader is their brand name for their sourced whiskies. They've got the Temperance Trader, but I can't find anything else. Now, this came out in 2016, so... Is it liquor.com? No, because that's just a blog. I'm struggling, to be honest. Bull Run, Oregon. See, this blog, liquor.com, says it's about $50. That's a single malt whiskey? Yeah, so you're looking at about $50. I can't see anywhere in the UK that's selling it. It's interesting. I wouldn't necessarily rush out to grab a bottle right now, but it's certainly one that if I found it somewhere, next time I'm over in the States, if I find it for about $40, $50, yeah, that's probably a fair price for something unusual, for something different. It's very drinkable, and that weird sawdusty, rye. It's not bitter. It's not sour. It's almost slightly hoppy. Yeah, actually, that nails it a bit closer. It's slightly hoppy. There is a slight beery element to it, which is pleasant, and it's an ale element as well. Yeah, so if you're a beer drinker, that actually, yeah, it's more of a kind of hops beery element than a sawdust, definitely. And it just lifts everything. It just makes everything unusual. So I'm going to do what I said I was going to do and do a little bit of the Benromach Organic, because like I say, the Benromach Organic is single malt whiskey, 100% barley, and it's matured in virgin oak casks, which have just been charred and then matured for, how long is this one? 7 years. So I would have picked that as older than 4-year-old as well. I think that's actually got a very good flavour balance and mouthfeel for such a young whiskey. Oh crap, which one did I pour? That one. It's because it's the one with Benromach on it. So let's see if we can't do a... Yeah, there is a definite beery element, especially when comparing it to something else. This has got a nice bourbony character to it. This has the sweetness of bourbon, but then there is this additional beer element to it. Right. Room's slightly too cold. This is, yeah, it's a little bit more scotchy. It's a bit fresher. Little hint of mint to it, and then there's this bourbon sweetness in. But if I tried that neat, I would say, yes, that's Scotch. Whereas this, which is the Bull Run, is more bourbony. So if I tried that blind, If I tried either of these blind, Benromach Organic, if I tried it blind, I would probably err on the side of Scotch. If I tried the Bull Run, I would err on the side of American. And strictly speaking, there's not much difference between the actual production techniques between the two. It's very interesting. It's worth seeking out and it's worth picking up as something quite different. I'm going to be very interested to see what the Westwood's like. Now, I do actually have a little bit left in that bottle. So when I do the Westwood, whenever that is, maybe tomorrow, probably not, I'm going to then compare it with that, because from what I gather, having done a quick bit of reading, the Westwood is actually a very similar style in terms of how they're making it. It'd be interesting to see what the difference is in terms of the flavour. I like that. I like American whiskies anyway, so I'm always going to have a soft spot. But that is, it's different, it's unusual, and yeah, definitely worth picking up. Right, I shall see you at the next one. Cheers.